Michael.
Lino.
Welcome to another episode of the Edmundite Show.
Lino, thank you for welcoming me. And welcome to our viewers.
Yeah.
Wonderful people. All.
We are live again.
We are live.
From our office inside Michael's college.
Studio.
More like an office than a studio.
Yeah, okay. We're working on it.
So, before we begin, we had a very busy week this week.
True. A lot going on. Week of Christian Unity.
Week of Christian Unity, which it ends tomorrow with the conversion of St. Paul. Started with the Feast of St. Peter last week.
I looked into it. This is more complicated than we need to get into, but I guess the Catholic Church moved that Feast of St. Peter to a different day, but Protestants still have it. But that's something that we're working on for Christian Unity. So.
Yeah, but anyways, it ends tomorrow. We had Dr. John Armstrong. He was a guest that the Vermont Ecumenical Council invited, and we had an interview with him.
We did.
And a special edition of the Edmundite Show. It seems that putting videos on YouTube when you don't live stream is more complicated than I expected.
Oh, that's what the factor is.
So I wanted to be that. I wanted that to be live before our show today. So go and look at it. But
it'll be up there.
It will be there.
It's cool.
It will be there.
First ever guest, so very exciting.
Yeah. So I call it in a very original way. I call it the Edmundite Show Special Edition.
Edmundite Show Special SSE, as it were.
As it were.
It's an SSE.
Yeah, SE. So look for it. It will be on soon.
Very soon.
It will be soon. Yes.
Soon.
So in our topic today, Michael.
Lino.
Last week we talked about the homilies and preaching, and
I was just writing one.
Yeah, exactly. And the one of the topics that has come in our world, talking with other priests and our Edmundite brothers, is the fact that something that's very palpable and very realistic is that we are losing people at our liturgical celebrations in our masses.
That is true.
So Michael and I thought to do a 3-episode series. Holy moly.
Special edition.
Well, yeah, kind of.
Every edition's a special edition, but a special investigative report.
Yeah, so the idea is to...
Or something.
Talk today about the Mass in general, what the Mass is.
What is it?
Then next week, the Mass you will hear today is divided in 2 parts. So next week we'll talk about the first part of the Mass, and then the week after we'll talk about the third part of the Mass. So if you have any comments or any questions to ask about the Mass, please write it in your comments today, and we would do our best to talk about those and to refer to those when we're talking. So without further ado, Michael, what is the Mass?
What is the Mass? It seems like it should be a simple answer to a simple question, but as with everything else, it's always more complicated, right? I think at its base level, number one, the Mass is a communal celebration.
Right.
Okay? It's a communal celebration. It's the church community gathered together to share word and sacrament. So we listen to the scriptures, and we share the Eucharist with one another. We share the good news of the scriptures. We share the body and blood of Christ with one another, and it has its roots as a communal celebration, a communal gathering, a communal meal, going back to the time of Christ, even prior to that, if you go to the Jewish roots of it. But there's so much going on. It's really this, Catholics believe it to be the source and summit of our spiritual lives, as it were, because it's in that moment where Christ is made present to us, where we have the opportunity to engage with each other, the opportunity to engage with the church, to be present as church, and to worship together, and to understand things together in that way. I feel like I kind of was high up in the sky about it. Maybe you can...
Well, as you said, first of all, I think the Mass is a communal thing. I've been thinking about it since we decided this to be our topic, and I went back in time, and I remember when I was a kid.
Way back. Oh, that's pretty far back in time.
When I was 10 years old.
I won't tell you how long, but that's far back in time.
So when I was 10 years old, I was in my preparation to make my first communion, right?
Okay. Sure.
And the Mass we attend to, it was supposed to be the children's Mass. So the music and everything that could have been adapted to be closer to what a child will understand was made. And I remember that one of the entrance songs we usually sung was called La Misa es una fiesta. The Mass is a party.
Okay.
So one of the I think it was the refrain said, La Misa es una fiesta que nos une, La Misa es una fiesta con Jesús. So the Mass is a party that gets us together, and the Mass is a party with Jesus.
Okay.
I think
it's not wrong. I mean,
no, even today when I'm not 10 years anymore. So even today, I see the Mass in that context. Of course, my understanding of the Mass has grew, especially after doing my studies. But
sure.
I think that at the very core, the Mass is that. It's a celebration. It's a party. It's something where we gather together around the altar to celebrate that Jesus came to the world, and in obedience to God, as St. Paul says it, he was condemned to death, and he accepted that, went through it, and with that he gained the salvation to the world. So we celebrate that in the Mass. So it's a joyful celebration. It's a happy celebration. So I think that's the way I see it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think one of the things I do in my masses, not in my masses, when I celebrate the Mass, and I think you have seen me doing this, is that I ask people to respond loudly to when they have to, and I try to get them involved as much as I can, because as I said, the Mass is not the priest doing hocus pocus on the altar. The Mass is our celebration. Certainly you need someone to lead the celebration, because otherwise it would be a circus, but it is the celebration of the people.
Absolutely.
I don't have more thoughts about that.
I think I broadly agree with you. I'm thinking in my mind of kind of the pieces that are sort of unpacked during the Mass and what's important there. Like where, if we say that Christ is present during the Mass, where is that? And I know that our colleague Jerome Monachino said something similar to this. Maybe he got the idea from, who's that guy that he likes a lot? Fragamini. That dude, who's a priest, I think, at the Diocese of Albany. But Jerome said, or Fragamini said, somebody said that there's, I think, four places that Christ is present during the Mass. In the person of the priest, so the presider is in persona Christi. We can talk a little bit about what that means. So that's one. It's in the Eucharist itself, so the bread and wine itself, we believe that Christ is present there. It's in the Word, okay, so the sacred scriptures that are opened and read and explained, so Christ is present there. And then it's also in the people. So Christ is present with the people that are there to take part in it, not as an audience, it's not an audience listening to a performance. It's a group of people gathered together to celebrate something that they hold in common that way. And I think that's one of the things for the past 50 years or more that the Church has really been trying to emphasize, is that this is not just the priest's thing, okay? This is something that all the people have a role in, all the people participate in. Maybe there's better ways that we can facilitate that or do that or whatever it is, but that's at the core of it. This isn't just the priest's thing, this is the people's thing.
And also the idea of that every person that is there enriches the celebration.
Exactly.
So not only it's important to you be there, but when you don't go to Mass, you're missed.
Yeah, everyone else misses out, or Lino and I miss out if there's people that
your
aren't
participation,
there.
the participation of the people, is that, it's. I think that everybody brings something to the celebration of the Eucharist, celebration of the Mass. That when somebody misses out, we all miss out.
Absolutely.
Because that communal idea of the Mass. So the other way I describe it, I don't know, this might be even blasphemous. I hope that I don't offend anyone.
Well, disclaimer there. Now I'm curious.
Yeah. No, the things that I also talk about the Mass, not as the Mass, but imagine when you go to a birthday party, a loved one's birthday.
Yeah.
When the cake comes out, what everybody does, everybody sings Happy Birthday from the top of their lungs. They don't reserve anything. Even that uncle that nobody likes how he sings sitting in the corner. He sings out of the
He's singing.
He sings very loudly, very joyful, and nobody complains he's singing out of tune that time. So it's a very joyful celebration. Everybody does it. I think that the Mass should be like that. And that's why I think when I start the Mass and I say in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and people don't respond joyfully, or it's like we're missing something here.
Sure.
And I even tell people that as weird as it sounds, the Mass for the deceased, the funeral Masses, should be a joyful celebration, because we believe that this person, that certainly we're sad because we lost that person, but even in that we are joyful and hopeful that this person is going to be with God.
Absolutely.
What better place to be if you're not here than being with God? So even in that situation where we are sorrow might be in our hearts, we also have to be joyful and celebrate the Mass with joy and sing and think that our loved one, it's with God.
Absolutely. I agree. Well put. Now, in talking about the Mass, this is maybe an interesting thing to say. So the name itself, what is this? What does that come from?
Mass?
Yeah.
I don't know the word in English.
Oh, okay. I was hoping it would be like a softball thing, but then the language difference gets there. So, well, I know that in English it comes from the Latin missa, somehow, and it's the Latin in the Mass, or the original language of it. There's this moment towards the end of Mass where the presider would say, "Ite missa est," which means, go, you are dismissed, go forth. Because what happens at Mass is something that you go out with, you take it with you. So it's not something that just happens in one space, this is my Sunday thing, and this is, I need to, that's important to gather together that way, but you take it with you and go out forth with it. So it's this sending forth, this going forth. That's what it is. So we gather together with the purpose of knowing that we'll go forth carrying it with us. And I don't mean this to be critical of people or say this, and some people just might not be aware of it, but this notion of, I have to go to Mass just to be there and to receive the Eucharist and then get out and then I can not think about it. It's okay, that's not necessarily the way that it's intended to be thought about. We're getting sort of food for our journey, and then we're going forth on our journey. So it's like, what are we taking with us? Where are we going from here? That, to me, you can't separate the two things.
There's like the food, like the same way we eat to keep the body running. This
exactly.
Is the fuel to get the soul going.
Exactly.
And only that, it so if we accept that fuel, the same, like, if you put it like as a gift, when you receive the gift, you want to give it to other people.
Right.
So they say they feel the same joy. So that's the idea, that you get full the Sunday Mass. If you don't go during the week, or during the week, you get full of this joy, hope.
Absolutely.
And then you go out to the world, give this to the world, because if you keep it to yourself, what's the good of it?
Yeah. I think this might be a specifically English problem, which is why we maybe had that awkward exchange just now, but because the word Mass in English means another thing too. It means like a large group. So I think that some people think that when they hear the word Mass, it just means, well, people just gathered together as a mass, as a group. But that's not what the word means in that sense. It's not connected to that. It's not related. It's good if a lot of people are there, I think, but it's not about that aspect. It's that sending forth piece. That's what it actually means. And that's
maybe the word Eucharist is more meaningful.
Word Eucharist might be more meaningful way to describe it, actually. Well, the word Eucharist, I mean, let's break it down a little bit.
Sure.
So whenever we have the letters E and U together.
Now, don't look at me. You are the expert in Latin and Greek.
I don't know if I'm an expert at Latin and Greek, but EU...
But you definitely know more than I do.
EU in Greek usually has a connotation of good, goodness in that sense. Goodness, togetherness, connection. And the word Eucharist itself.
So the prefix EU, you mean?
The prefix EU, yep. So those letters. I'm trying to think of other words that have it in it.
I'm thinking one, but it's not that great. Euthanasia?
Well, that's interesting because thanatos in Greek means death. So I'm not saying that this is the case, but literally in Greek that means good death. Good death. that's not my feel of it, but that's the way that people term it and describe it. Maybe you should answer the question because I lost my train of thought.
Eucharist.
Eucharist. Please, ball's in your court. I've done a lot of babbling.
I love babbling. Well, I don't know where you're going with the good thing, and I honestly say that I don't know the translation from Greek.
Okay.
I do know that the Eucharist is thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So giving thanks to God for the gifts we are receiving.
Yeah, it's that good spirit, that good words. All this is tied up together to it.
So it's a way to come together as a community, as the people of God, and give thanks to our God, to express our needs, our feelings, and said like, hey, we're here because we're thankful to you for all that you have given us.
Absolutely.
So, and the best gift of that, of course, is the redemption we won on because of Jesus went on the cross.
Absolutely.
But also that other stuff we talk about, the nourishment for the soul, and being there as a community that celebrates our faith and our belief in God, the communal aspect of it, and the presence of the priest and as the presider or the one that leads the celebration, not the only that celebrates.
Right.
And also the music, the choir, the choir is there only to lead us in song, but we all have to sing.
Yeah.
It's
not a concert, you know.
Yeah, even the uncle that doesn't sing.
Yeah, even if your voice is not great, you want to hear it.
Like mine.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not a music critic. You know,
Good.
It's probably for the best. I don't know if I have a great voice either. But in thinking about this, I think everything that's important in our faith is present there. So people gathered together. This is a good thing. I mean, our faith is not an individual thing. So it's not just, oh, wait a minute, this is my thing that I've discovered for myself and it's secret to me and I don't talk to anybody about it. Like that, there's nothing that way that's faith, because we're connected to people that came before. We're connected to our scriptures, which is the book that was put together by generations before us for our purpose, telling a story about community. Opportunity to read from scriptures happens during Mass, so that's a part of it as well. As you said, this bringing our prayers before the community and asking for God's blessing, asking for God's help that way. The memory of the figure of Jesus Christ, you know, using the exact words used by Christ during this event called the Last Supper, where bread and wine was shared, food was shared, the presence of Christ truly within that. We'll unpack that maybe in another week or so in terms of what we mean by that. That's a piece of it. This long-standing tradition, you know, different things happen on different days depending on where in the calendar the Mass is taking place, you know, what particularly it means. We'll talk about that a little bit more too. So there's everything that people are drawn to by the faith. If people are drawn to this thing at all, it's present there. So for me, thinking of the practice of the faith outside of that context, to me it doesn't make any sense. And I think it's, I guess, a source of, I don't know if sorrow is too strong a word, but it wants me to, you know, myself do better and to kind of present myself better. Because if I can think of people that, you know, they consider themselves Catholic and they want to do all this good stuff and whatever else, but then they say, well, I don't go to Mass for whatever reason, that, you know, it's kind of a source of sadness for me, because I want it to be, you know, doesn't really matter what I want, I guess, but it ideally can be a place where everything that is attractive about this comes together. And in some ways, I guess you and I, as the presiders, the leaders, we have a responsibility to make sure that things come together as best they can. But all the pieces are there, and it's something that we need everybody's help with.
Yeah. And one of the things you said, for me, is mind-boggling. Because if you look at the history of humanity, I don't think there's something that has been done consistently for 2,000 years. Since Jesus' resurrection and since the Holy Spirit came on the apostles, the Eucharist has been celebrated every Sunday somewhere on this planet.
And it's looked differently, like it sounded differently. It wasn't always in a church, it wasn't always in a cathedral, it wasn't always in the languages that we use now, but the core essence of it. Yeah,
at least the words of the institution of Jesus has been used for the last 2,000 years, every Sunday without no stopping. And that for me is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
So for me, that's an indication that God has to be behind this. If you find something else that has been done for the last 2,000 years without stopping, please let me know. But I seriously don't know an example of that. Something that consistently gets done no matter what's going on in the world. The Mass has always been celebrated in a Sunday. And I think also the beauty of this is the words that we use when we consecrate the chalice. Do this in memory of me. We're doing this by the command of Jesus. I wonder what the disciples thought when Jesus said that to them. She was like, what would have they thought? Like, what he's talking about?
Yeah.
But that idea that we're doing this because is what Jesus asked us to do, not because we want to, not because out of a whim, not because it's something cool. It's just because Jesus, our Redeemer, asked us to do this in His memory. So I think that those characteristics, the Mass in general, for me, are the core, if you will, that we celebrate joyful because it's Jesus' command, and the fact that we have been doing this for the last 2,000 years. I mean, that's, for me, it's mind-boggling.
Something, I don't know why this popped into my mind, probably because I watched too many movies and things like that, but when you said it's interesting how, not interesting, but it's amazing how the Mass takes place different places, different all around the world, different situations. There's a movie, maybe you've seen it or heard of it, called Apocalypse Now, which is about the Vietnam War. It's this
I know
war
about
movie.
it.
And so it's American soldiers, Vietnam War. I just remember one scene in it where there's like soldiers running back and forth in this, battle zone or whatever, and there's a military chaplain that's celebrating Mass at that moment. So even kind of in the midst of all that chaos, it's like, here's this symbol, something here is important about this, and it's something that stood out to me there.
Now that you're talking about that, when I was back at home, I led one of the classes for First Communion in our parish, and some of the parents got together and gave me a book about St. John Paul II. John Paul II had just died maybe a year or 2 years since he died, and they gave this. It was like a very thick book about the life of St. John Paul II at that time, and he one of the things he did when he was a priest, he would take a group of youth camping and canoeing and kayaking. And because this would be during the weekend, what he would do, like on Sunday, they would put one of the kayaks upside down, and celebrate the Mass.
Use that as the altar.
Use the kayak as their altar and celebrate the Mass there. So it's that idea of community. So we're having fun. We're like we are in this trip and this adventure, but God is here with us, and the way that God manifests itself, at least in a tangible way, at least since Jesus ascended to heaven, was in the Eucharist. Because that's the other part, we haven't said anything about that in that we Catholics believe that in that piece of bread and that cup is Jesus Christ Himself who's there. We believe in the presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. So it's not only, as you said, as we have said, a show or something we do for the fun of it. It's God who makes Himself manifest among ourselves by a mystery that we don't understand, but is there.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff.
It is. Thank God.
I remember, thank God indeed. I haven't been a priest for that long, so I'm not, other people have different perspectives and more wisdom than I do about this. But I remember the moment of my first Mass, which was here at St. Michael's College. So the day after I was ordained as a priest, I celebrated Mass in the morning. And the feeling that I had when I was doing that, and just how kind of amazing it was and how unbelievable it felt to kind of be up there. Because, some days you're having a stressful day or whatever, and like a busy day, I kind of think back to myself, remember that moment and how you felt then, and bring that to you every Mass that you celebrate, every time that you gather together with people, and have that energy there, because it was something amazing for me and kind of really revelatory for me, and I hope to always remember that.
Yeah. Well, folks, it seems that our time has come to an end.
Oh dear.
Yep. Too bad, right?
Sad.
We could be talking about this for ages and ages.
We could. That's the sad thing. We'd bore you all.
Yeah, we can kill you boredom. But not to kill you to boredom, we're going to leave it here. As I said, next week we're going to be talking about the first part of the Mass, or as we know as the liturgy, the Mass. As we know, the liturgy of the Word. And the week after, we're going to be talking about what is known as the liturgy of the Eucharist. Those are the two parts. The Mass is divided. We're going to talk about later. For now, leave us your comment. If you want us to talk about something on those two episodes, please leave it in your comments. We're going to be looking at those before our show starts next week. Like it, dislike it, or subscribe if you haven't done so. And it will be until next week.
Lino, always a pleasure.
It was saying to you, and don't forget, we are going to be posting that video with Dr. John Armstrong.
Okay, that's true.
Look forward to it.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Exclusive interview.
You're going to see us twice this week. I'm sorry for that.
We have to look at ourselves in the mirror each day. Can you imagine how hard that is?
Yeah, how hard was that? Okay, folks, have a good week, and
Should probably end it.
we'll see you next week.